support in Indian Wells. Look at this. I mean, this was in Australia. Court 6 literally had a line. I know I'm exaggerating, but it went for miles at the Aussie. It was wild scenes there. Allie, can you remember a women's star who gets this type of support wherever she goes?
Yeah, well, Taylor Swift. I mean,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, for sure.
A 21-year-old from the Philippines is doing something even world number ones and Grand Slam champions struggle to do. She's packing stadiums, setting social media on fire, and forcing tournament organizers to rethink crowd control. Analysts are now openly debating whether she's the biggest draw in women's tennis. Not necessarily the best player, but the biggest attraction. And those are two very different discussions. So what do you think? Is Eala already the most exciting name in women's tennis right now, regardless of ranking? Drop your take in the comments. I'm genuinely curious where everyone stands.
I'd have to say maybe a little bit of Sania Mirza. Back in her heyday, obviously the Indian fans took to her and they followed her all around the globe, obviously not to this extent. And I think the ceiling that Eala has is obviously that much higher. And I'm going to bring in a little boxing here because my dad wanted me to be a boxer, but I chose tennis. But Manny Pacquiao.
Good call.
Manny Pacquiao, we saw him when he, was at the top of his game. And alongside Roger Federer, he actually had more prize money. So I think that if Eala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court. I mean, she could be rolling in it, if you will.
Yeah.
Let's start with a number that doesn't even sound real. Eala's pre-tournament press conference at the 2026 Australian Open pulled 171,000 views. Novak Djokovic's drew around 80,000. Aryna Sabalenka's? Just 9,000. Read that again if you need to. The world number one on the women's side, a multiple Grand Slam champion known for overpowering opponents, generated a fraction of the attention. Eala drew nearly 20 times more views. And no one in the tennis world is pretending that's a normal stat.
Lights up a room, too, and I remember last year when she beat Iga Swiatek, and she kind of did it with a lot of grace and humility, and it was really, for me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that and watch her try to continue to progress, because I like her game. Obviously, she wants to get better than where she is now, the 32 in the world, but she's got a lot of good hand-eye coordination and ability to take the ball early and redirect. But the fan stuff is always fun for me, because whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get up to the top.
It's interesting, Ali mentioned Sania Mirza. She has nearly 13 million followers on Instagram. That's 5 million more than Carlos Alcaraz, and nearly as many as Alcaraz and Sabalenka combined. So that's how big Sania Mirza was, and will be. But Eala going to be seeded for the first time at a 1,000. To find out who she will play in the second round, check out the draw.
This is what the expert conversation around Eala sounds like in 2026. It's no longer cautious or politely optimistic. It's not the standard tennis media script about great potential and a bright future. That phase is over. The discussion has shifted. Former ATP players Sam Querrey and Steve Johnson recently posed a question that many in the sport have been quietly considering. Is Eala the biggest draw in women's tennis right now? Johnson didn't hesitate. His answer was yes. Not maybe. Not she's getting close. Just yes. That word matters, because biggest draw has a very specific meaning. It doesn't mean best player. It doesn't mean highest ranked. It means who fills stadiums, who spikes streaming numbers, who forces tournament organizers to rethink security and crowd logistics before the first ball is struck. And in 2026, on that particular metric, the argument for Eala is becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. The surge of expert attention really accelerated at the Australian Open. The scenes around her matches were described as chaotic in the best possible way, lines stretching far beyond what her ranking alone would predict, crowds gathering hours early, an atmosphere that felt more like a headline quarterfinal than an early round appearance. At the time, she wasn't even inside the top 30, yet the energy surrounding her felt like that reserved for established superstars. The Filipino fan presence was massive, vocal, and organized. It didn't resemble a typical tennis crowd. It felt closer to a concert audience. Passionate national followings aren't new in tennis, but the scale attached to Eala has surprised even seasoned observers who struggle to find a clean historical comparison. When analysts were asked which women's star commands that kind of traveling support, one comparison floated was Sania Mirza. At her peak, Mirza had Indian fans following her globally, and her social media reach, nearly 13 million followers, reflects the depth of that cultural connection. That's what cross-border influence in tennis looks like. Yet some experts now suggest Eala's ceiling could be even higher. Another name that surfaced in that same discussion was Manny Pacquiao, and that alone tells you how big the lens has become. At his peak, Pacquiao wasn't just a champion, he was a national event. Fight nights in the Philippines felt like holidays. Streets emptied. Schedules shifted. At his commercial height, he was earning in the same stratosphere as Roger Federer when you combined prize money and endorsements. So when tennis analysts reach for Pacquiao as a comparison point, the conversation has clearly moved beyond routine hype. And these aren't casual fans saying it. These are former pros and seasoned commentators who've built careers on measured analysis. So what's actually driving this? The support doesn't materialize out of thin air, and it isn't purely emotional. There's a specific combination of factors behind Alex Eala's rise that feels different from anything tennis has seen in quite this form. First, the story is genuinely compelling. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy, leaving home at a young age to develop in one of the sport's most demanding competitive environments. She climbed through the junior ranks, captured junior Grand Slam titles, and then faced the hardest transition in tennis, turning junior promise into WTA-level results. That pipeline is notoriously unforgiving. Many junior champions fade quietly when the physical and mental demands of the Pro Tour intensify. Eala didn't. She broke through in a way that felt earned and visible to a fan base that had been tracking every step. When she defeated a reigning world number one, it wasn't just the upset that resonated, it was how she carried herself afterward. The composure. The humility. The sense that she understood the magnitude of the moment without performing it for cameras. Those moments build loyalty. They create attachment that marketing budgets can't manufacture. Second, the market she represents is vast and largely untapped in tennis. Southeast Asia is one of the fastest-growing sports consumption regions globally, with massive digital engagement and a young, online audience hungry for representation. Eala doesn't just appeal to that audience, she embodies it. When Filipino fans stream her matches, travel across continents to watch her compete, or organize visibly at tournaments, it's about more than sport. It's about cultural presence on a stage where that presence has historically been limited. What's happening isn't just a breakout season. It's the collision of performance, personality, and geography at exactly the right moment. That's why the tone around her has shifted from cautious optimism to something that feels transformative. For many fans, it's about seeing someone who looks like you and comes from where you come from competing on the biggest stages in the world. That emotional engine doesn't run on rankings, it runs on identity. And in the 2026 sports media ecosystem, identity travels faster than almost anything else. Third, and this part is crucial, her tennis is genuinely high level. Influence without results fades quickly. Eala has real technical substance. Her hand-eye coordination stands out. Her ability to take the ball early and redirect pace changes the geometry of rallies before opponents can reset. Coaches have identified that as a legitimate weapon, not a highlight reel gimmick but a structurally disruptive skill. It's creating tactical problems for players ranked above her. She opened 2026 with momentum, made a deep run in Dubai, climbed 16 spots to reach a career-high number 31 in late February, and secured a first-round bye at Indian Wells because of it. A 10-6 season record underscores that she's not coasting on hype, she's competing, winning, and building. The on-court results are rising in sync with the surge in attention, and each is reinforcing the other. From a business standpoint, this is where it gets especially interesting. Tournament directors in the Middle East and Southeast Asia have openly compared her drawing power to Manny Pacquiao. Even Novak Djokovic, not known for casual praise, has described the surge around her as a good problem for tennis. When someone of Djokovic's stature frames your fanbase that way, you've entered a different tier of conversation. Attendance patterns are already straining expectations. Venues are encountering crowd sizes they didn't plan for, all driven by a player who only recently cracked the top 30. That disconnect between ranking and demand is what makes executives pay attention. Indian Wells is next, and observers expect Filipino support to travel in force. The comparison that keeps resurfacing is to Sania Mirza and what she represented for Indian tennis globally. Mirza created a blueprint for how a player from a non-traditional tennis market could build a cross-border following that outlived her peak competitive years. Her massive social media presence wasn't solely about titles, it was about cultural significance. She became more than a player, she became a symbol. Analysts are now suggesting Eala's ceiling in that dimension could be even higher. Not cautiously, higher. The numbers reinforce that framing. A press conference drawing 171,000 views compared to Djokovic's 80,000 isn't random fluctuation. It signals audience intent. People are choosing who they want to hear from. And in the current landscape, that choice matters. Then there's the social media reality shaping all of this. The next generation of sports fans, the audience that will define the business of the game for the next 2 decades, lives in short-form video, instant interaction, and constant behind-the-scenes access. Alex Eala fits naturally into that space. Her wins don't just get covered, they circulate. They turn into highlight edits, reaction threads, stitched clips, and shared cultural moments. In that ecosystem, performance and personality don't operate separately, they multiply each other. And right now, both are trending upward at the same time. Her interview presence translates effortlessly on camera. There's an ease, a warmth, a smile that genuinely connects. In today's attention economy, that isn't superficial, it's strategic. Charisma determines whether a moment goes viral or quietly disappears. We've already seen the blueprint for this kind of crossover with Coco Gauff, who demonstrated how a young women's player can break beyond traditional tennis audiences into mainstream visibility. The endorsement power, the cultural reach, the ability to connect with people who don't typically watch the sport, Gauff showed what that looks like at the highest level. What's striking is that analysts tracking engagement metrics say Eala is generating comparable attention in specific regions and, in parts of Southeast Asia, even outperforming established global names in raw digital interaction. That matters. Yes, the ranking difference is real. Gauff is a Grand Slam champion and firmly inside the top tier of the sport. Eala, hovering around the top 30, doesn't yet have that resume. But the engagement curve around her isn't behaving like that of a typical number 31 player. It's behaving like something larger, like influence is outpacing ranking. And the sports power brokers are starting to acknowledge that the old equation, ranking equals relevance, doesn't fully explain what's happening here. So what comes next? That's where it gets truly compelling. She's only 21. Her ranking is rising at the same time her cultural presence is accelerating. At that age, technical refinement, physical strength, and tactical maturity still have significant room to grow. If the on-court results continue to trend upward, deeper runs at major events, more wins over top 10 opponents, the kind of consistency that turns a ranking in the 30s into one in the teens or even the top 10, the blend of performance and influence could become unprecedented in the modern women's game. This wouldn't just be about a successful player with international fans. It would be about an athlete functioning as a movement, backed by one of the most passionate sporting nations in the world, competing in a global individual sport with massive broadcast reach. That ceiling is enormous. And what makes this moment remarkable is that the floor is already high enough to force tournament directors to rethink logistics and longtime observers to search for comparisons outside tennis just to describe the scale. 2 years ago, very few serious analysts would have predicted this scenario. Now, in early 2026, it's impossible to ignore. Alex Eala isn't just a tennis storyline anymore. She's a viewership driver, a cultural catalyst, and by all accounts, a crowd management challenge in the best possible way. And if the trajectory continues, this could be the beginning of something far bigger than a breakout season.